What's going on, everybody on here? And I haven't done this video for a while. It's been about 2 months, and I want to get back to talk about the relative value of Sword and Shield and Scarlet Violet booster boxes as it relates to the value of the cards in the set versus the booster box price. So before we get into this, I do want to mention one thing about Ascended Heroes because I've had a lot of people asking me why are the individual booster packs of Ascended Heroes selling relatively cheaply, specifically at a little bit of a discount to what the 3-pack blisters. And the one thing I will say, and this is obviously a word of caution, there are a lot of sellers that are selling 400, 500, 600 packs. They should be in 3-pack blisters, so they're easier to ship, but they're not. And I will tell you that there is a very, very high probability to certainty that those packs were ripped out of 3-pack blisters. They were weighed to strip out the God packs, and now they are most likely not dead. You could certainly get hits on them, but you're certainly not almost certainly not going to get a God pack because that's what these folks do. Like, they're in this to make money. So when you're buying individual packs from any seller, especially Ascended Heroes, Prismatic Evolutions, just assume you have zero shot at getting a God pack because they're all already weighed. So that being said, let's get into the video here. So I have rolled in Phantasmal Mega. We have a little bit of a history here. I've updated the age of all of the sets. Down here we can see this is the summary. So for Mega, the age is 0.39, so 39% of a year, if you will. So 4/10. 1.83 years for Scarlet and Violet, and 4.62 years for Sword and Shield. And the reason why Scarlet and Violet isn't 50% of Sword and Shield, quite honestly, is because there's only 10 sets in Scarlet and Violet. There are 12 regular booster box sets in Sword and Shield. So it's quite simply just an exercise in math and magic. So starting over here, and I have these color coded. I'll go into these in a second. And the reason I have these purple, it's too early for this ratio to really matter, because over time the value of the cards are going to go down because there's packs coming to the market all the time, EX packs or EX boxes, things like that, and product is getting opened more and more often. So if we look at this, the price for value for Phantasmal 28%, 17% for Mega, 33% for Destined. For the longest time, these numbers were in single digits here for Mega. You can see back here in October. 16% for Destin. But even though the booster box has almost doubled, the value of the cards in the set has gone down fairly substantially from October when it was 2,400. Now you're just under 1,700. So getting into the actual meat of this, Journey Together, you're at 48%. And the percentages I don't have highlighted, they're kind of in purgatory where they're not bad buys, but they're not good buys either from a value perspective. Now, if you're looking at boxes that aren't the greatest boxes, but they don't have the greatest amount of volume in the market, SV Base now at this point in time, Obsidian Flames obviously doesn't have a great value. And then, obviously Stellar Crown and Journey Together, I don't believe we've ever gotten booster box reprints of any of those. So, obviously the older they are, the more likely these are going to have a premium at some point in time that well exceeds the value of the cards in the set, similar to what we see down here with Darkness Ablaze, Rebel Clash, and Sword and Shield base. So moving on, Surging Sparks. Surging Sparks has the single best value proposition of any booster box in Scarlet and Violet or in Sword and Shield. So right now, the booster box at $265 is sitting at 26% of the value of the cards in the set, which is $1,000. And I know some people don't like that as a measurement, but tough shit, it's what we have. If you want to complain about it, I am happy to hear what key metric you would prefer to use on this. That is simple enough where we can actually have reasonable conversations. Stellar Crown, 62%. I would argue that this is getting toppy. I would also argue Obsidian Flames is getting toppy at 84%, but the boxes for both of these keep going up. You're 271 for Stellar. You're 317 now for Obsidian Flames. Twilight Masquerade Temporal Forces at 32 and 34%. The reason why I don't think these booster boxes are quite as high as where they would be is because they don't rotate out until April 2027. Now, we did get a reprint of Twilight Masquerade in 2025. Temporal Forces, we got a small reprint in December of 2024. I know because we got about 15 cases through Mad Owl of all folks who they haven't had product in forever. So that was right, kind of like the last gasp before everything tightened up. So really good value in these sets. And then Paradox Rift at 31%, 262 in the box, $845 of value in the card in the set. And with Paradox Rift, Obsidian, Paldea, SV base, rotating out here in the next, call it 6 weeks, the value of the cards is going to stop moving down, and it's going to start moving back up in a reasonable direction, because at this point, everybody is going to have a high degree of confidence that these cards are not going to be reprinted. And again, rotating out of standard play does not necessarily equal out of print. It is a reasonable assumption, or a reasonable person would assume, that if the cards are no longer playable, there is absolutely no reason for the Pokemon Company to print them. That's reasonable. It is not a hard and fast rule. So SV base, 45%. Silver Tempest, Lost Origin. These are two sets that have moved pretty substantially in the last 6 months. So they're kind of at fair value-ish. Astral Radiance is a little bit less at 38%. So there's some value there. But then you get the Brilliant Fusion. They're at 50% plus. So they're a little bit toppy, a little bit ahead of themselves at this point. Evolving Skies, 43. Close to being a little undervalued, but for the longest time, this was in the 30s. And the value of the cards in the box have gone down. And that's actually kind of a common theme that we've seen here in not all, but most of these Sword and Shield sets over the last couple months. The singles prices have softened just a little bit. Chilling Ray, 33%. For the longest time, this was the single best value in any of these sets. Now you have Paldea Evolved, Paradox Rift, Twilight Masquerade, and Surging Sparks, all sitting with a better value proposition than Chilling Reign. And obviously the 31% at Paldea Evolved and Paradox Rift, those are superior to the other two sets, which would be Surging and Twilight, because they don't rotate out again for another year. So Battle Styles, 37%. Yeah, this set has always been a little undervalued, and I know the folks in Discord love this set. There's always been a stigma to this in Vivid Voltage because they drop so much of it on the market at the absolute worst time. If these sets came out today, I think it would be a lot more positive perception in the market. But again, time kind of cures all wounds here. But Vivid Voltage, 58%. The set's pretty crap, other than the Pikachu in there. And then you have Darkness, Rebel, Sword and Shield. These just continue to go up. The sets are trash, but the boxes are rare and people buy them. So going into these columns here, this is the percentage of booster box price increase since the end of July. So call it 6 months, probably 6.5 months. But let's just say this is a 6-month movement. And then this is really the value of the change of the cards in the set. So for Sword and Shield base, 8% on the boxes, 8% on the set. Not super meaningful. 23% on the boxes, 7 on the cards in the set for Rebel, and then 21% for Darkness, and 18% on the cards in the set. But what I want to mention here is, the singles from Chilling Reign and prior really haven't moved a whole lot. And then if you go up here to Paradox Rift, up through Stellar, they haven't moved a whole lot. And then I think what's interesting is you have Surging Journey together. What we've seen in the last 6 months is really the tail end of that maturity, where the maximum amount of packs are being ripped and tossed into the market, or the singles are being tossed into the supply in the market. So that's part of the reason why you're seeing this. And it's super interesting because Destin's down 19, Journey Together 15, Stellar or Surging Sparks is only down 6%. So you can see that the price depreciation of the cards in the set really slows down as the sets get closer to Jesus. What is Surging? Surging is over a year now. Oh my God, it's been a long time. That was November of 2024. Yeah, so Yeah, super interesting. So you're really looking at about close to 15 months before the singles really start or stop dropping and start to stabilize, which is fascinating. And then we go down here. So Obsidian Flames really through Evolving Skies. These cards are up very, very strongly. I'm a little surprised that Brilliant Stars singles haven't performed better in Astral. Astral's a great box. There's reasonable value in the set, but there's no bangers. And you know how the Charizard like Brilliant does. So only up 33%. And then I mean Lost Origin up 33%. Sorry, Astral only up 13%. But then you have the rest of these cards, and everything is just moving. Everything's churning and moving forward. So you can see that as these sets age, this is what you expect to see, and especially in a bull market. And quite honestly, the fact that this is the back half of 2025, you roll in the front half, these numbers are up over 100% pretty much across the board from the box price, not necessarily the set value. So this is really, I don't want to say it's a consolidation phase, the back half of the year, but it really is a batshit crazy bull run, taking a little bit of a step back, consolidating. Now, obviously, the boxes have all moved up over this period of time, every single one. Singles, not necessarily. They've been kind of sporadic, hit or miss, depending on the set they're at. But this is what it looks like in a bull market, and things are just going to continue to do the same thing, in my opinion, really for the foreseeable future. I don't see any catalyst in the market that is going to slow this down. Now, one thing I will tell you guys, since we're at the end of the video, and if you stuck around this long, this is a good one. Spend some time with a couple of my reps over the weekend, and Pokemon, they have their annual meeting with all of their different distributors. It's generally in the first 2 months of the year, 3 months of the year. And the message pretty much across the board was they're expecting material growth with all of their distributors in 2026. So their goal is to get Pokemon product in front of as many people as possible. So the supply is coming. They've communicated it's coming. And keep in mind, last year this time, they were telling folks that, hey, we're not going to free up material print space until Q1 of 2026. Now they're saying, hey, guys, you're going to have uncomfortable growth in 2026. So be ready for it. So the tide has changed. The tables have turned. I know a lot of the kids with microphones on YouTube. You're not going to believe it until it comes. Might be too late, but just this is why I preach: when you're this crazy in a bull market, you need to focus on risk mitigation and capital preservation. It's not about buying best in rivals at 600, waiting for the next sucker to pay 700 for it. So, anyway, guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, and have a good night.